It's day 22. I am on my way to Familial, I think is how you pronounce it, but I can't remember. It is June something, 15th. And I was just realizing that I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do with myself in Europe between when my Camino is over and when I have to get to India, and my Camino is over tomorrow. So I kind of need to figure that out. We'll see. I might just spend a couple extra days in Porto again just until I figure out what to do. But I am feeling better this morning, although I did have a hard time getting up. It was quite a bit of a struggle, but I've been trying to focus on rehydrating and making sure I stay cool. I soaked my bra in water this morning to keep my core temperature down. I have my cooling towel to wrap around my neck and keep my neck and head cool. I also stuff it behind my back to help keep my lower back cooler. This overheating problem has been a problem for me for many years. I have an autoimmune disorder that my body attacks glands that make moisture, and it is an incredibly mild disorder. More just a kind of a nuisance, something I just have to be mindful of. I do get dry eyes. I find it difficult to make tears. My eyes just get red and burny instead of actually producing tears. I use eye drops regularly. I get dry nose. That's actually what I feel the most, is my nose gets dry. I rub Vaseline and beryllium in my nose to try to keep it moist and reduce the soreness. And my salivary glands will swell up when I get dehydrated, and I get like chipmunk face. And I do have a tiny bit of neuropathy in my face. It's mostly just numbness. I kind of describe it as like it feels like I went to the dentist hours ago, and it's just like the Novocaine hasn't totally worn off, but it's just in my one cheek that I get numbness. But other than that, it's actually really quite a mild disorder. It's possible that it might get worse as I get older, but right now it's really just mild. And actually in 2016, when I was diagnosed with this disorder, was when I was on those steroid infusions that caused me to gain weight, and that was because when I first started showing symptoms of the neuropathy, because my dad had MS, they were concerned that that's what it was, is that I had MS, and so they acted immediately, which is exactly what they should have done. And they, the number one thing with treatment with MS is to do these steroid infusions, and so that was why I did them, or why I had to get them, was because they were just concerned that's maybe what I have is MS, and thankfully I do not. My dad wasn't the only person in my family that had it. I had a cousin that had MS and her daughter that had MS, so it is fairly prevalent in my family. So that was the concern, but I thankfully don't have it. But as a result, because it's glands that make moisture, those, and it's actually like what are known as epithelial cells. We have these glands all over. It's not just your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. But as a result, I also don't sweat the way I'm supposed to sweat, and so my body, I do get overheated really, really easily, and have for many years, and is actually one of the reasons that I wanted to move to Vermont. It was for the cooler summers and the humidity. If it hadn't been Vermont, it would probably have been the Pacific Northwest. A lot of people with my disorder end up in the Pacific Northwest for that reason, for the mild climate and the humidity. So But since I've been in Vermont, I haven't really had a problem with it at all. It hasn't been something that I struggled with. And even without an air conditioner, I still had things that I would do that would help me regulate my body temperature that I had forgotten that this was an issue. But I have now been reminded that this is something that I struggle with, and it's something that I need to be mindful of, especially while I'm outside for as long as I am. And even though yesterday I wasn't in the sun for a lot, I have been in the sun for many days in a row. The nights don't really cool down too much, and so it's hot in the albergues that I'm sleeping in, and so I stay hot all night. And so I just need to make sure that I really keep myself cool and cool down. I regularly, especially in Utah, would get up in the middle of the night and go take a cold shower or a cold bath. And I don't have that opportunity here at the albergues because, it would be disturbing to others for me to do that. So I just need to make sure that, I do things like wrap myself in my damp towel. That worked out really well last night. Even though the towel dried quite quickly. It's one of those quick dry towels anyway, but with my elevated body temperature, it ran out of dampness pretty quick. So anyway, that is something that I do struggle with is getting overheated, and have for many years. So I've just been reminded that that's a problem for me, and I need to just be mindful of it and take the necessary precautions to keep my body temperature cool. And I have been drinking a lot of water and a lot of Powerades to help me rehydrate because I got dehydrated yesterday. Anyway, so that's kind of to follow up from my overheating issue yesterday. I definitely think that it was heat exhaustion. I don't think it was as much as heat stroke. I wasn't dizzy or anything, but I do have a mild headache. I did get some muscle soreness in my shoulders, and not soreness because I've been working, but just I don't know, that soreness you get with muscles when you're sick. And so I definitely think that it was, a mild heat exhaustion that I was suffering from yesterday, and probably will suffer from for the next couple of days. I am just sluggish this morning. I am not going real fast. I don't have a lot of energy. It took me a lot to get up and get going this morning. I tried to get up early so that I could do as much of the walking in the morning when it's cooler rather than walking in the midday. And I think that was another problem, is the last couple of days I've been walking more in the afternoon heat rather than in the morning when it's cooler. And so it would just make sure that I do what is necessary to keep my body cool. But other than that, I'm doing fine. My muscles are fine today for the most part. I'm just a little hot. I am surprised at how difficult it was to cool down yesterday. Even wrapped up in a wet towel and even doing some of the things to cool my body down. It was a struggle to get my core temperature down. And it was, my limbs were cold. I could tell just touching my legs were cold and my arms were cold, but my core was still just way overheated. So anyway, that's kind of a follow-up to yesterday. I don't have as far to go today. I think it's 10 kilometers, which is 6 miles. And so I should be able to do it in the next couple of hours, hopefully before noon, and then I can get out of the sun and out of the heat and get inside and take a cold shower and cool off and make sure I keep my body temperature cool. And then I gotta go find my gelato because I've prescribed that for myself. Anyway, that's all for me. I will check back in later.
La 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 li la la li la li la 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 up up la 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 la
20 kilometers. So I realized that I was a few days early for Father's Day. Somebody that I was talking to, somebody that I was talking to said that Father's Day was last week, but it's actually next week. So, which is good because then I didn't miss it. I was disappointed that I had missed it, so I didn't. But even though I thought I had, but I have been thinking a lot about my dad today, and well, you know, for the last several days, but a lot today, as I, you know, have talked about my autoimmune disorder and the risk of MS, and you know, one of the things that I've been thinking about was how scared I was at the thought of being diagnosed with such a life-altering disorder. And you know, we see these celebrities that have been diagnosed, and Romney and Selma Blair and now Christina Applegate, that are telling their stories and how it's affecting them. And you know, it has become more, you know, people are talking more about the disorder and how it really does affect them. And I was thinking about the time, you know, before I was actually diagnosed with the disorder I had, when there was still a concern of MS, and how scared I was and how alone I felt. And I've been thinking a lot about my dad and how scared he must have been and how alone he must have felt, you know, throughout his life. As you know, he was diagnosed in his late 20s. And he died when he was 56. So he had it for, you know, 30 years or so. And, you know, growing up, I was really unaware of the effects of MS and the impacts that it really did have on people and on their lives. I knew my dad was disabled, but I always just thought that was because he was a double amputee. I never really realized that even if he wasn't an amputee, that he would still have been disabled, and that would still have been a problem. And you know, you see like Christina Applegate at the most recent awards show that she was in, and you know, she's a pro and she puts on a good face, but you can see the pain and the fear in her face, and how scared she is at what her life is, you know, the rest of her life is bringing toward her, and how she has lost everything that she has built at this point in her life. And you know, Selma Blair has an absolutely incredible story for anybody that needs some inspiration. Look up Selma Blair and her story, because when I first learned she had MS, which was, you know, 8 or so years ago at this point, she could barely talk. She couldn't really form words. It took her a really long time to even think through what words to say, and then she really had a hard time vocalizing them even when she could. But then she had, I believe it was stem cell therapy. I'm not exactly sure, but you know, she was on Dancing with Stars a couple seasons ago, and what a miraculous recovery she has made. And you know, I'm sure it'll get worse again, but I really have been thinking a lot about my dad and the impacts that MS really did have on his life. And we had our trailer when we'd go camping that had an air conditioner because overheating is a problem for people with MS. And yeah, just how isolating and alone it feels when nobody else understands what you're feeling. Nobody else understands what you're going through. Most of these kinds of disorders, the symptoms of them are hidden, especially like the fatigue and the brain fog and these types of things that, you can't really express to people. People think you're just, whiny or tired or, you're just lazy or something. And it's not that at all. It really is a problem. And it's definitely not something that you want to experience for sure. All these flies. And so yeah, I have really been thinking about that and how I really didn't understand growing up. Even though my dad had it, I really didn't understand how much it really does affect your life. And even though my disorder is very, very, very mild, I'm really, as far as autoimmune disorders go, I really am lucky that this is all I have. But it still impacts my life. I still suffer from the fatigue and I still suffer from the brain fog, but on a very mild scale that I cannot comprehend what it must have been like for someone with these, even more damaging disorders, these even more like life-threatening disorders like MS, and how much that really does impact you. And I talked about my neuropathy in my face, and it's just numbness. But there have been a couple of moments over the last several years that it kind of gets a little bit stingy, and very mildly so. But I am able to kind of go, oh, I can see how this could be incredibly painful, if it were ever to get worse. And for someone with a neurological disorder like MS that, it really is absolutely like, the pain is overwhelming. And I knew my dad was in a lot of pain, but I always thought it was because of his phantom pains from his amputee, or like his amputations. And I just really, really, really never realized how much pain he would have been in just because of the MS. And I have a friend from high school that was diagnosed with MS, and how she's in and out of the hospital, and how much it really has impacted her life. And she'll go through moments where she can't speak and can't walk, and if she'll get a flare up, and it'll it's absolutely like a crippling disorder. And so I am, it really does make me appreciate my dad a lot more, and the strength and the courage that he had, and the fact that he really didn't talk about it much. He really didn't share with us, all of the problems that he must have been going through. And, I'm sure some of that was because it made him feel lesser or inferior in some way, but it was also because he was proud, and he didn't want to be seen as weak, and he wanted to be someone that we could look up to, and it really is a true testament to his courage that he suffered the way he did for as long as he did. And just sort of kept it to himself. But I am now very aware of those feelings of fear and isolation and feeling alone, that I can't even imagine that with the extreme issues that MS does cause, how much more that he must have felt that than even I did. I was just scared of being diagnosed. I can't even imagine what it would have been had I actually been diagnosed with it. So anyway, I was just thinking about that, and thought I would say a few words. It's my last night before I get to Santiago, and I'm having a hard time believing that this is over. I don't know what to do once it is over. I still have a couple of weeks before I get to India, and I have to tell you that like I'm a little bit terrified of India. I don't know what to expect. The program is going to be fairly intense. It starts at like 6 a.m. with the first yoga session, and then have several yoga sessions and training and learning about anatomy and all the things all day, and then ends the last yoga sessions at 8:30 at night, and then you go to bed. And so it's a pretty intense training, and I will be there for 2 months. So I am starting to like realize that I have a pretty intense couple of months coming up, and I regrettably looked at the temperature in Rishikesh today, and it was like 96 degrees there. And so I'm really hoping they have air conditioning at the yoga school. I don't know what to expect. India is completely different. Western Europe is still very modern and has similar culture to what I'm used to, but India is very different. So I am there's this sadness of the Camino being over, and also this like just being scared of what's to come. But tonight's my last night of the Camino. Although even once I'm done with the Camino, I'll still be staying in hostels, and I'll still be carrying my backpack, and I'll still be doing all the things. I just won't be walking like I have been. So, and I won't have a purpose, and I won't be meeting the people that I'm meeting. I encounter the same people throughout the Camino. One of the women that's here in the hostel tonight is somebody that I actually encountered on the trail several days ago. And I've seen her a couple of times since then. So, it's nice to be able to see these familiar faces. And anyway, yeah, I'm really sad that Camino's over. I don't really know how to feel about it, actually. I'm sure tomorrow will be even more so, because from what I understand, like actually getting to the cathedral is fairly anticlimactic. The line to get your certificate, it's kind of like the DMV. They have a ton of people to go through, and so it's like you just line up and you're in and out, and they try to rush you through as quickly as possible. So that aspect of it it's kind of like the Zelda game I described in the how I lost weight videos, that like once you get to the end, like then it's over. And it's fairly anticlimactic. Like, make sure you spend your time like playing all the games and meeting all the people along the way, and you're not just rushing to get to the end. And I am glad that I did take longer to do the Camino. Part of me was like, oh, I could have finished this a couple weeks ago, and that's probably true, but I've had a really good experience. It's been just a really good experience to walk through all these countries and experience it from this slower pace. And the Camino culture is really ingrained in the area. I mean, a lot of the homes and I mean, it's not just the businesses, like people's homes they'll decorate in like Camino decor, and they have the seashells and they have the arrows, and you know, hikers with their walking stick, and it's just part of the culture here, and so that has been nice. So anyway, I will wrap it up before anybody comes back to their bed, and because I don't want to disturb anyone, but it's my last night. Bien Camino.